The house that dripped saltwater. The beach house looked like it had grown out of the rocks themselves. Gray, gnarled wood twisted by years of storms and salt air. It stood crooked at the edge of a forgotten shoreline, far from the nearest town, where jagged cliffs met cold waves with a constant booming rage. Kara wasn't thrilled about the place, but her friends had insisted on a weekend getaway. Something about disconnecting, no signal, no distractions, just waves, wind, and wine. It was Mark who found the listing. Dirt cheap for a 2-story cabin, with ocean views. Too cheap, Kara thought when she saw it in person. The front steps groaned under their weight, and the key took effort to turn. Inside, the air smelled thick and briny, like the sea had moved in and never left. Bit of a fixer-upper, Jenna joked, brushing cobwebs from the chandelier. Tom popped a beer and raised it. To haunted houses and hangovers. But Kara was already distracted. She pressed her hand against the nearest wall. It was damp. Not just humid wet. She sniffed her fingers. Salt. That's weird, she mumbled. What? Jenna asked. The walls are wet, Tom grinned. Maybe it cries when it's lonely. The first night passed with laughter and firewood. They drank on the porch, surrounded by crashing waves and starlit skies. Kara excused herself early. Something about the house pulled at her, and not in a good way. It felt like it was watching. Upstairs, she explored the creaky hallway, flashlight in hand. One door didn't open. Another led to a bedroom with faded seashell wallpaper. At the end of the hall was a bookshelf, old and warped, like it had absorbed a lifetime of ocean air. Something about the shelf looked wrong, too wide for the space, pushed in unevenly. She gave it a tug. It slid. Behind it, a narrow door, unpainted, no knob, just a rusted iron latch. She opened it. The room beyond was pitch dark. She stepped in and gagged. The stench was thick, rotting seawater, like a fishing dock at low tide. Her flashlight beam flickered across the room, catching glints of moisture. The walls were slick, and clusters of white, barnacle-like crusts bloomed across every surface. She took a step forward. The floor squished underfoot. Not wood slime. Seaweed? No. It was something else. Drip. She turned toward the sound. Drip. 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 Water fell steadily from the ceiling into a shallow puddle in the corner. Her eyes traced it up, but there were no pipes, no leaks, nothing. Just shadow and rot. Goosebumps ran down her arms. Suddenly, something shifted in the corner. She ran back downstairs. The laughter continued. Kara stood in the living room, pale, breathless. There's a hidden room upstairs, she said. Mark raised an eyebrow. Like Narnia? No, like mold and slime, and it smells like something drowned in there. Old houses leak, Tom sighed. Probably mold from the sea. Don't go poking around. But that night, no one slept well. The house creaked more than it should have. There was a constant wet dripping noise that echoed in the halls, even when it wasn't raining. The sea sounded louder, closer. Kara lay in her bed listening to what sounded like waves hitting the walls. The house shuddered sometimes, like something massive moved outside. In the morning, there were puddles, small ones in the hallway. One in the kitchen. Salty, cold, briny puddles. Mark found barnacles on the windowsill. They all blamed the sea air. By the second night, the dripping was everywhere. Water pooled under their bags, soaked through shoes, crept under the doors. They tried to laugh it off until Jenna screamed. She had gone upstairs to get her charger and came down with her arm bleeding, claiming something grabbed her wrist in the hallway. I felt fingers, she said. Cold, wet. It didn't want me up there. Mark and Tom searched the house but found nothing. No intruders. No broken windows, no animals. That night, Kara sat by the fireplace and stared into the flames. There's something wrong with this place, she whispered. Tom scoffed. You're just creeped out. Old houses are weird. "No," she said. "This one, it's sick. It's like it's bleeding seawater." They argued until the power cut out. Total silence fell. Only the sound of dripping remained. At 3 a.m., Mark vanished. He'd gone out for air, stepping off the porch to take a walk along the beach. He didn't come back. They searched until sunrise. Found nothing. No footprints on the sand. No sounds. Only still gray waves and rising wind. Kara stood at the edge of the water and felt her stomach twist. The sea looked calm, but it smelled wrong. Like decay. Like something dead but alive beneath it. The next night, the sea attacked. No other word described it. The wind picked up, howling like a chorus of screaming voices. Waves slammed against the walls of the house, though the tide was still out. Windows rattled, doors shuttered. The air turned ice cold, and water began pouring from the ceiling like rain. Jenna cried in a corner, her skin breaking out in blisters, her eyes bloods. Tom tried to escape, but the front door was swollen shut. The kilometers. Water had crept inside. It wasn't just puddling anymore. It was rising. Kara swore it was climbing the stairs. Then something crawled out of the walls. First, just a hand gray blue slick with too many joints. Then an arm, then a torso. No face, just a smoothed over head like a jellyfish skull with long strands of seaweed-like hair. Tom screamed as it pulled him under. The water closed over him. Even though they were on the second floor, Jenna ran. Kara tried to stop her, but she bolted upstairs, soaked and sobbing. The creature followed. Kara knew there was nowhere left to go. The house was drowning. The walls oozed. The floorboards warped. The ceilings dripped, as though the ocean had reversed, and flooded downward from above. She crawled into the room behind the bookshelf. It was dry. Still. Silent. Even the dripping had stopped. She sat in the corner, clutching a broken piece of wood, waiting, listening. Her breath echoed in the narrow space, heart pounding. Then the whisper came. "You found where she drowned." A voice, but not human, liquid, gurgling. She turned toward the sound and saw something rising from the puddle in the corner. A girl, no, the shape of one, her limbs thin and bone white, her face smooth and eyeless, her mouth a jagged black slit leaking seawater. Kara froze. The thing moved toward her slowly, dragging along the floor, leaving streaks of slime behind it. The barnacles pulsed, and the walls bled water like veins torn open. "You opened her door," it whispered again. The water level in the room began to rise. Kara pressed herself into the wall. "Who are you?" she cried. "Left. Forgotten. Drowned," the thing said, its mouth opening wider than it should. Then it lunged. Kara awoke hours later on the shore. Alone. Soaked. She stumbled back to the beach house. It was gone. Not destroyed. Gone. No building. No wood. No sign anything had ever stood there. Just jagged rocks and waves. A search party was called later that week, but no bodies were ever found. No official record of the rental house could be traced. The listing disappeared, but Kara still remembers the voice. She dreams of dripping water and whispering walls. And sometimes, when it rains, the walls of her apartment begin to weep salt. She knows now you don't find that house. It finds you. And once you open her door, you never really leave. The sand beneath the listing looked too good to be true. A pristine two-bedroom beach house perched on a private coastline. Untouched golden sand stretching endlessly in both directions. And not a single neighbor for miles. Jason and Nina had been looking for a short escape from city life. No emails, no stress, no people. The photos showed sleek white interiors, glass doors that opened to a sun-drenched deck, and a sunset view so vivid it looked unreal. "Only $85 a night?" Jason said, raising an eyebrow. "Probably a new listing trying to get reviews, Nina." replied, already booking it. They drove in late the next day, a winding coastal road ending in a narrow dirt path that led down to the shore. The sun dipped low as the house came into view, clean, modern, and quiet. A glowing box of glass nestled against a wide expanse of untouched beach. The sound of waves in the distance was soothing. No streetlights, no neighbors, no traffic. Just wind and ocean. That night, after unpacking and pouring wine, they stood barefoot on the deck under the stars. The sand glimmered under the moonlight. "This place is perfect," Nina whispered. Jason stared down at the beach below. "You ever seen sand move?" "What?" "Nothing," he said, shaking his head. But he watched it for a long time. It started with little things. The next morning, Jason found a line of footprints in the sand, not theirs, leading from the base of the house toward the dunes, vanishing halfway like someone had sunken straight down. That night, he woke to scratching sounds beneath the floor. At first, he thought it was an animal, maybe a raccoon or possum trapped beneath the crawl space. But the sound was too steady, too deliberate. Like digging, he pressed his ear to the floor and listened. Scratch, scratch, drag, scratch. Nina rolled over sleepily. "What are you doing? Do you hear that?" "Hear what?" He didn't answer. The next morning, they found the first hole. It was round, about 3 feet wide and unnaturally symmetrical, just beneath their bedroom window. The sand inside was damp and compacted, almost as if something had tunneled upward and stopped inches from the surface. "Creepy," Nina muttered. "Probably some kind of burrowing animal. No animal makes a hole like that." Jason stepped closer, frowning. The sand around the hole was undisturbed, no claw marks, no shifting or collapse, just smooth, fine grains, almost sculpted. That evening, he paced the deck with a flashlight, scanning the beach. There were more holes now, dozens, perfect circles, scattered across the shore like craters, all facing the house. The nightmares came on the third night. Jason woke choking on air, his mouth filled with grit. He coughed violently, spitting sand onto the sheets. Nina flicked on the lamp in a panic. Jason's eyes were bloodshot and sand clung to his tongue and gums. "You okay?" I was dreaming. Tunnels. Hands pulling me down." They washed his mouth out in the bathroom, only to find wet clumps of seaweed in the sink. Nina couldn't sleep after that. Neither could Jason. The scratching sounds beneath the floor grew louder each night. At 3:23 a.m., he recorded a deep scraping sound, a claw or tool dragging slowly beneath their bed. The video glitched halfway through and never played again. On the 5th morning, Jason didn't wake up. Nina rolled over, expecting to see him staring out the window again, but his side of the bed was empty. The sheets were soaked wet and gritty. Clumps of sand pressed deep into the mattress like he'd sunk into it. A long drag mark trailed across the floor to the glass door. It was open. Nina ran outside barefoot. The wind howled against her ears. The sky a flat gray. There, in the sand, were grooves, 2 long trails as if Jason had been pulled. No footprints, just drag marks leading down the beach. She followed them until they simply stopped. No Jason. No body. Just an eerie silence broken by the soft rustle of wind over dunes. When she called the police, her voice shook. They arrived 4 hours later, but by then, the drag marks were gone. The sand was smooth again. The beach, perfect and untouched. They questioned her, searched, found nothing. "He probably just went for a walk," one of the officers said. "People wander off in grief. Happens all the time." But she knew. He hadn't walked. He had been taken. Nina stayed one more night. She couldn't bring herself to leave, not without answers. Not without him. She sat in bed clutching his phone, staring at the hole beneath the window, now wider. At 2 a.m., she heard it. Voices. Muffled, garbled, coming from under the floorboards, like whispers buried in wet earth. She crept down and pressed her ear to the ground. Beneath us. Beneath. She grabbed a kitchen knife and pried up a floorboard. Beneath it, sand, not dirt, not support beams, just sand. Sand were there. Should have been foundation. She tore up another board. More sand, wet, black, moving. Then she saw the fingers. Pale, thin, wriggling just under the surface, reaching, waiting. She ran. She threw her bags in the car, hands trembling. The engine wouldn't turn over. She tried again. Click, click, nothing. The headlights flickered. The battery was fine. Outside, the sand shifted. Mounds rose and fell. Something moved just beneath the surface, circling the car like sharks. She jumped out and tried to run. The sand resisted her. With every step, her feet sank deeper. She screamed and clawed toward the dunes, but her ankles were wrapped in something cold and slick. Hands, not fingers, just pressure. She broke free, crawling until the house disappeared behind her. When the sun rose, she was on the highway, covered in dirt and seaweed. The car was never found. 3 weeks later, she returned with a private investigator. The house was gone. In its place, untouched dunes. No path, no foundation, no rental history. The beach was pristine, like nothing had ever been there. But she knew, sometimes, late at night, she hears the scratching again beneath her apartment floor. And in her dreams, Jason stands at the edge of the shore, buried to the neck in golden sand, his mouth open wide as a black tide rises inside him. The beach house had been built on something ancient, something that tunneled deep and waited for warm blood and sleep, something hungry beneath the sand. And now that it had tasted her, it wasn't done. The tides never left. Emma hadn't been to the beach house in over a decade. Not since the night her parents vanished. It was supposed to be a routine summer weekend, just the three of them and the ocean. No storm was forecasted, no strange visitors, no signs of violence. But by morning, the doors were locked from the inside, the coffee still warm on the table, and her parents were simply gone. The authorities claimed it must have been the sea of freak current, a slip during a midnight walk, a quiet tragedy. But the ocean had been calm that night. And even at 16, Emma knew something was wrong. The house had never let them leave. Now, 10 years later, she stood at the gate, key trembling in her hand. The beach house was untouched, paint faded, wood cracked with salt, windows fogged from within. Her uncle had kept it vacant all these years. Out of respect, he'd said. But she suspected no one wanted to go back inside. She stepped in. The smell hit her first, wet salt and rot. The air hung heavy, damp and warm like a greenhouse after rain. Every surface seemed coated in a thin film of moisture, and the floor creaked under her steps as if the boards were swollen with water. She dropped her bag by the stairs and walked through the house. Everything was just as it had been. Her mother's plants still hung in the kitchen window, long since withered. Her father's old clock still ticked on the wall, but out of sync, each second a fraction too slow. The mirror in the hallway was completely fogged, though she hadn't showered and the windows were open. She wiped it clean. The moment she looked away, it fogged again. Outside, the ocean shimmered, calm, blue, deceptively peaceful. That night, the sound returned. Emma sat on the living room couch, wrapped in a blanket, tea untouched beside her, as the house filled with the unmistakable sound of waves, but it was louder than it should have been. She walked to the front door and opened it. Silence. She shut it again. Inside, crashing water. She stood still, heart thudding, and turned slowly. The walls were sweating. Lines of moisture trickled downward, forming faint streaks of white salt. The floors, damp again, gleamed faintly in the moonlight. She climbed the stairs slowly, every step echoing hollow. That's when she saw the footprints. Wet, bare, human. They led from the top of the stairs toward the attic, trailing puddles with each step. The same attic where her father had stored old vacation photos and summer gear. The same attic where no one had gone since the night they vanished. The hatch creaked open when she touched it. She climbed up. At first, it was too dark to see. Then, her phone flashlight caught a glimmer silver, curled in a puddle. Her mother's locket, still wet. Emma picked it up and heard it. Voices. Low, distorted, like something drowning beneath water, choking on air. Her name whispered over and over in a dozen different tones, like overlapping layers of breath and salt. She dropped the locket and ran. The next day, she told herself it was grief, trauma resurfacing after years. She walked the beach for hours. The sun warmed her skin, the tide gentle. A child might believe this place could never harm anyone, but Emma knew the truth. This beach house was a mask, and something behind it had waited 10 years for her return. She returned to the house at sunset. The windows were fogged again, despite the heat. Inside, the air was thicker than ever, and the salt on the walls had hardened into sharp, jagged lines like veins. That night, she locked her bedroom door, but it didn't matter. The waves came louder. The floor grew wet beneath her bed. She turned over and found her reflection watching her from the bedroom mirror, but it wasn't matching her movements. It just stared, wide-eyed, mouth open, salt water dripping from its lips. Emma screamed. The mirror cracked. She fled to the living room, only to find the couch soaked, the teacup shattered on the floor, the walls bleeding seawater. She could hear it now, not just waves, but something moving with them. Feet slapping weightly against wood. Soft, slow breathing echoing through the walls. She backed into the hallway. There, nailed to the wall beside the fogged mirror, was a piece of paper, folded neatly. In her handwriting. The ink was smudged but readable. The tide takes what it owns. The date was tomorrow. Emma didn't sleep. She sat on the staircase, back against the wall, eyes wide. Just before dawn, she heard the front door groan open. She ran but found it still locked. Water now crept across the floor like mist. The carpet sagged with each step. She fled to the kitchen, and there they stood. Her parents, or what remained of them, their faces pale and bloated, eyes wide and blind, their mouths dripping salt and mud. Seaweed hung from her mother's hair. Her father's clothes clung to him. Like soaked rags, they didn't move. They just watched. Why? Emma whispered, shaking. Her mother's lips parted. Water spilled out. You were supposed to stay. The house groaned around her, boards bending inward like a great breath was being held. Emma turned and ran upstairs, footsteps splashing through puddles. She reached the attic again, panting, the air like steam. At the center, the locket, open. Inside, 2 photos, one of her as a child. The other, not yet taken. It was her now, standing at the attic hatch, eyes wide in fear. Then everything went black. When the neighbors came that morning, they found the house completely sealed. No signs of entry. No broken windows, but the windows were filled with water inside, like the house was flooded. Salt streaks ran from the windowsills to the ground. The air smelled like low tide. Emma was never seen again. But if you walk past the beach house at dusk, just before the last light fades, you might see them. 2 silhouettes standing in the attic window. Watching. Dripping. Waiting.